Oh, there is. There's one for Ecobee, which is what she's still doing. She's Eco-being it up.
Welcome back, listeners, or if you are new, welcome to the Digital Divide podcast. I am Justin Fry.
And I am Joshua Charletto.
Perfect. So let's go ahead and cut to the chase. All right, Josh, today on Newsreel, what do you have? Because I'm making you go first this time.
Well, today I thought I would mention an article that's kind of been... Well, actually, I should back up a step. I'm going to mention a YouTube video that debunks a news article that's been kind of blowing up about the new MacBook Pros from Apple with their new Intel Core i9 chips. The long and the short is that Apple put them into the new MacBook Pros as a refresh to the MacBook Pros as they came out, and there was a part to the design where they would throttle the chip down if the machine got too hot, as with most computers, or many computers, depending.
Yeah, of course.
It's just the ceiling for when it started throttling the machine down was very low, according to some people and some tests that were done. It seems as though that's mostly been A, debunked, and B, fixed. One is that a gentleman, and I put the video on YouTube into the show notes, ran a more real-world test, and the threshold is not as bad as people make it out to be. And the other part to it is that Apple released a fix yesterday that made some software changes so that that threshold is now better. But it's interesting to see the normal media latch onto something and run with it, and now, of course, it's Throttlegate. Just like we had, what was that, Battery Gate and...
Yeah.
Antenna Gate and Gate. Anyway, so the point is that sometimes it's good to do your own research, and sometimes it's kind of good to wait and see. But I thought this was interesting, so I put the video in show notes, and he did a great job with it.
I just want to. I clicked on one of the videos referring that are referred within the actual YouTube channel or the video, and one of the top comments on the one that I think is labeled MacBook Pro 15 is a scam. One of the top comments is, "Here's the real reason: Apple products since 2012 are not made for real professionals, and are for people who rely on advancement." Blah 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 blah. Apple products are made for posers. I just find that funny. I giggle. The guy just goes on this rant about how Apple products are stupid and they're useless, and pro users don't use them, and whatever. That's fine.
Just to be clear, for some people, they are stupid and a poor choice.
It's
but that's not everybody, and let's not make generalizations.
No, it's freedom of speech and freedom of giving a dang about what particular laptop or product you're using. But no, this is it's always interesting to see things be blown out of proportion, essentially. Whether it's the news media, for the better or for the worse. In this case, it was a little bit of a mixture of both. But then Apple, in true Apple fashion, put a fix out to calm the storm and essentially say, "Hold up, guys, it's okay. We can. It's not what it seems to be. We can fix this. It's really easy." And I mean, a turnaround in I think less than a week is pretty dang good. So.
Yeah, I found it interesting that a lot of the Apple publications were still calling it a fix, that Apple released a fix. I believe that was their words from their release, like their...
Apple was saying that.
Yeah, Apple was saying that. Thank you. But I really don't like using that word in this particular case. That gentleman in that YouTube video actually shows that most real-world scenarios, it's never going to get to that point.
Right.
And even some extreme real-world scenarios, it won't get to that point. And then Apple comes out and says that they fixed it with X, Y, and Z. And in reality, it was just a change of a setting. It wasn't really a fix. But now I feel like they're trying to catch up the curve and say, okay, we fixed it, in quotes, and now everybody can be quiet. So I'm not entirely sure that's the best way to handle it, but that's the way they did it. So anyway, pretty interesting.
Yeah, my last comment is that regardless if it's a real world scenario or not, part of QA and part of that QA process of products is to put it to its limits and ensure that there is a higher ceiling for things like this. I mean, there could be a case where somebody is in a very hot environment and is working and taxing the actual product to it and pushing it to its limits. So you can't always assume that it can't happen, but the likelihood is very low. But it just part of QA is always thinking outside the box, and maybe it was missed out. Maybe some budget cuts happened, and this test wasn't ran. So
I totally agree, and I do put that at Apple's feet. They need to do a better job of testing for what they are marketing the machine to,
mm,
and they are marketing it as a MacBook Pro. So
right,
if you're going to market it to the pro consumers or even the prosumers, as they say,
yeah,
which some would argue those aren't real pros, but we don't care.
yeah,
Even if you're going to market it to like a higher level consumer, you have to assume that they're going to use it at a higher level, and therefore it should be tested at that higher level. So anyway,
indeed.
I don't want to cover it too much, but watch the video if you want to, or read up some recent articles about the fix in quotes. But it was pretty interesting to see how that all transpired.
Right. And moving on to the next topic or the next new piece of news, I not necessarily about Apple, but I came across this article on Fox News, and take it if you want to. Yes, it's Fox News, but anyways, the title is "Smartphones Are Killing Teenagers' Memories," study says. So, Josh and I were kind of talking about this before we started recording, but I think of all the new pieces of technology or new fads that we are having, and then, for example, like the vaping that all the younger generations and my generation and older are starting to do. We're entering this without having a long term or seeing long term effects with these products, and smartphones are no exception. We really have only had true smartphones since the early or late 2000s. Sorry, I think the iPhone was what, '08, because I remember
Oh
being
seven.
'07, '08, because I was a freshman in high school. So uh, we don't know what it's a full generation of somebody growing up having a smartphone from a young age and what the effects could be. So, according to this article, were studies and I think multiple studies actually, but this particular study found that there is a negative impact on memory performance after exposures to radio frequency electromagnetic fields. Say that really fast. Radiation. So small doses of radiation. I mean, if anybody knows this, that there technically Wi-Fi does the actual Wi-Fi process does emit a very 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 small amount of quote radiation, but this article and this study is actually saying that the long-term effect of having devices such as a smartphone will lead to a negative impact on memory performance slash retention, which is actually not surprising to me. And I remember growing up with, I guess I should say growing up, but when smartphones really became popular, even flip phones, that there was people who weren't like sleeping with their phones near their heads because parents were like, "Oh, don't sleep with your phone near your pillow. You might
Oh,
get
I remember
radiation." Do you
that.
remember that?
Yeah.
So uh, it doesn't surprise me that there were studies going on in the background, and some of them might be just surfacing. Some might have already surfaced and haven't received the publicity this one particularly had. But it really makes you think that come 10 years, 20 years down the line, what other effects we might see to not just smartphones, but like digital media and how that could affect people like people who have attention deficit disorder or have a hard time concentrating or have short-term memory loss. So it's definitely an interesting article, kind of morbid in a sense where it's kind of depressing to think, oh my, we could be giving our 8-year-olds phones that are eating away their brains, but I don't know. It's just something to think about.
Well,
Now you're going to be going to your kid like, please
Okay,
don't.
so nowhere in the article does it say it's eating their brains.
No, it was
There was some memory
a
loss,
gross
is what they're
exaggeration.
saying. And, it's always important to remember with all of these news articles that we're talking about a single study, and
Yeah,
it was 2,500 students.
yeah, small
So
dose.
I personally would want to wait for many different data points to come out before we start even considering this to be fact, especially since even though sometimes I think Fox News is fine, it is Fox News, and so
Yes,
sometimes that's considered to be not as um newsworthy.
yes. Fake
Either
news.
way, I would want to see the actual journals, and I would want to see the actual study myself,
Right.
as per always. But it is interesting, and the point of this is that there are going to be effects. What those effects are that we do not know
Mm,
what those effects are, as you pointed out before.
right.
And it will be very interesting, I think, to see as time goes on, especially since now we're talking about a couple generations of these phones, and people having them as they grow up. What does that mean? And what does that mean physically, mentally, emotionally? I mean, there's so much to that. And it definitely has an effect. What is that effect? And I hope that question keeps getting asked because, as interesting and useful as they are, who knows? There
Yeah.
could be anything happening. And as you said, I could believe this. I would want to see more data points.
Yeah, and I think we talked about the latter half of this, but in a previous episode, I'm pretty sure we did. Uh, but one of the where this where this study really came from, or like I guess how it received such publicity was that it actually came out just a few days after, I guess, a similar study came out that was more or less focusing on the connection between smart devices and attention spans, not the radiation.
Yeah, yeah.
So that I can believe, and I think I see it, and you and I might see it in our own lives. But like that is more plausible, and where people are basically having an issue with paying attention or holding in somebody's attention because they're constantly checking their smartphone. They feel it vibrate and they lose concentration. So that's something more plausible that is included in this article, but. Please take a look at it. I don't want to spend too much time on it because we can talk about this for days. But please take a look at this and see what you guys think. Take it with a grain of salt, of course, as all news articles could be just being overzealous about the message. So,
It is interesting, though, to think about, and I look forward to seeing more studies as time goes on.
yep, I agree.
Cool.
All right, cool. We will now move on to follow up, follow up, follow up, follow up.
I wanted to follow up on something I talked about last week. I mentioned a game. Of course, I'm going to mention games on the
No.
podcast, right? I mentioned a game called No Man's Sky. Go back and listen to the episode last week if you don't know what that is. I had some live follow up, I'll call it, today at work. Somebody told me that it actually came out at $59. It was a $60 video game when it was released.
Yes.
So that, I think, added to the issue when they released the game, and it was missing a whole bunch of the game and was not what they promised. So yeah, you go and you buy a game for $60, which, by the way, even some of my most favorite games, I will wait, as I have mentioned before in the podcast, to pay less money for them
Oh
because
yeah.
that is a ridiculous amount of money. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So you spend money like that, and then the game is less than, or even, it's less than what they promised at the very least. So that's incredible to me and a huge disappointment, even just talking about it. I can't even imagine if you were hoping the game was complete and then you bought it and you're just so disappointed. What a waste. So it
Surprise.
kind of added a little bit more context for me. And the gentleman that I was speaking with actually mentioned how angry he was, even just listening to us talk about it, and how he, even though they've fixed most of it in theory, that he probably will never return to the game. And he also posed a theory, which who knows if it's true or not. Maybe somebody figured it out, maybe someone didn't, or probably nobody did, but posed a theory that that was probably their main goal from the start because they needed more development money. So once they got the money coming in, then they started adding more patches. I mean, the patch did that added everything back in took like 6 to 8 months to come out. So who knows? I don't know, and we will never know probably. But it is interesting because it was a poor planning, poor situation, just poor release and poor marketing. So that was why I was interested in it, and it's interesting to see the response even to the patch. So anyway, just wanted to follow up and mention that it was $60 at release and didn't come down for quite some time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I obviously didn't really care much about this game from the get-go, so I didn't pay attention to it. So I'm going to have to talk to you offline to figure out who said this.
Yeah, I had some of the same feelings, and I was skeptical, as I mentioned to him today. Like, I said to myself, and I think we talked about this last time, so I won't cover too much, but I said to myself, there's just no way. I can't think of a way to build this conceptually in
Yeah,
my head. And I'm not the smartest person in the world, but I certainly feel like every time they talk about video games, I can conceptually come up with ways in my head on how to build that kind of solution to
yeah,
the type of game that they're talking about. And that game, I'm like, there's just no way with the amount of stuff that they're promising. And sure enough, it came to fruition. So too bad. And that stinks for all the people who were spending lots of money on it.
yeah. And I think that's very similar to Star Citizen, if anybody knows what that is. Star Citizen continues to be a game that hasn't come out yet, and people are buying into and like buying physical space, or I guess digital space within this game, this universe, and that's just something that's constantly being developed, and people are just pouring money into it. There's too much that is being offered or promised, and it just feels a lot like how No Man's Sky ended up, and I wonder if they're being more hesitant because of that. So
Yeah, and not that we want to talk about video games a lot here or anything, but
nope.
um, it would be probably a good later topic to talk about how that whole process, even for things beyond video games, has changed with crowdsourcing and early access and what's promised when and when it gets released. Because you're right. I mean, I can think of actually a handful of games where they have just been sitting on people paying for them ahead of time and not actually doing anything with them. So, and just sitting there and calling them early access. So it seems like a newer model, and just would be interesting to kind of analyze and think about.
Yeah, uh, I would like to talk about that, and hopefully a couple episodes down the line, so we're not bombarding people with video game stuff.
Hey, by the way, video games. We mentioned video games, and guess what? Video games.
Who would have thought we would have made a podcast about video games at this point?
Right? Exactly.
All right, so with that being said, I think that's it for follow up. We can go ahead and move on to our topic of today. Topic really falls off of what we talked about, I think two episodes ago about the voice assistants. I think Josh and I both agree that we kind of just hit it from a high level and try to explain it very quickly, and some people might have already asked, oh, okay, that's great, thanks for telling me about these cool products, but like, well, how am I going to use them? What do they actually do besides tell me what the weather's like? So I thought we would have we'd do a little lesson, or we'd learn a couple things or two today, couple two three things today. So
Yeah, I thought this was a great idea. You suggested this and kind of a follow up to the other episode where we can actually talk about what you can use some of these devices for, how you can use them, how you can actually have some function that will give you um, basically how you can use them to better manage some things in your life or even just have some fun. So I thought that was a great idea, and I jumped on that immediately when you suggested it.
gotcha. Yeah, exactly. So forgive us if we will try and stay on topic, or at least stay on a progression to like what we can do, and like the things that you can do within physical object or physical environments, whether that's the smart home devices attached to your Google Home, your ladies in the tube. Uh, so we can talk about that, but also like something specifically on your phone that uses a lot of what you use on a day-to-day basis, but make it automated, or at least automate some of that process. So
Yeah,
I don't know, Josh. Where do you think we should start at this point? Should we explain some of the possibilities overall, or should we go right into like picking something specifically and going from there?
Um, that's a great question. Let's start with what which of these do you use on a daily basis for things that are constant in your life? In other words,
Hmm,
like a
good question.
Siri or something. I think it would need to be like the phone or something like that, or
Okay.
Google Assistant with you.
Okay, so I'll do it. I'll do two things. I'll do my daily life, and then like what I'm going to try and do is focus on something that I use on day to
Okay,
day,
great. Yeah,
just
that's
because I
perfect.
think that makes sense. One, um, just a lay of the land, smart devices that I have. I have Echo and an Echo Dot attached to some Philips Hue lights, and I'll link all the objects and products in the show notes. But those are really the only smart things that I have at the moment. So you don't really need a lot to buy into the smart home world. So, and it can get expensive, but you really don't need everything under the sun. Um, what I do with these devices, specifically the Echo, one of the things that I do is the Echo or the Alexa, or sorry, Lady in a Tube provides a service, and Josh, I think we'll probably talk about this later about what Amazon skills are like, but uh, it provides a service for me that I can ask for, hey, Lady in the Tube, what's my flash briefing for today? What's really nice is that one, it's customizable, and two, you can literally have it say anything you want. So, what's a flash briefing? Flash
That
briefing,
was going to be my question. I'm glad you asked.
yeah, flash briefing is basically, and like I said, can be configured, but it's more like a quick news flash, like quick news articles read out to you, and it can be from different providers of what is happening that day. So what I have it set to do currently is one, it first calls the Relay FM subnet uh, flash briefing skill, which then gives me three tech topics that I need to know today. And that again is by Relay FM called Subnet. And again, all this will be linked in there.
And Relay FM is a podcasting network, correct?
Correctamundo has several other podcasts, and you can go ahead and get that or subscribe to any of those through iTunes, etc., or wherever you're listening to podcasts. Highly recommended. There's a lot of great stuff out there.
Yeah, they're not paying us any money to sponsor or
No,
having them on as a sponsor, but they make a lot of really good high quality podcasts. So check them out. I know Justin and I both listen to some of theirs. So
yeah, religiously. Sometimes it's a little crazy, but what that's just one part of it, and then you can add other pieces to it where it tells you the weather, like a 7-day forecast. It'll reach out to the BBC America and give you news articles through there. I have one piece of the flash briefing that actually gives me this day in history, which is really cool because I'm a history buff, and it'll actually tell me what happened on this day in history, and it's just kind of cool to see something that might have happened on the day, kind of revitalize my memory on things that I learned in college or high school. But I think it's really fascinating, and it's all free. That's the best part.
so you get to set this up in the Amazon skill. How do you go about doing that? Is that right?
Yeah. So the Echo and the Echo Dot can be and are required to be maintained through an Amazon Lady in the Tube app. That's really hard not to say.
It is rough. It's
Um,
such a habit.
yes, it is. And you can go through this application, which can be on your smartphone, any phone. So it doesn't have to be an iPhone. It can be any Android device, which is really nice since it's cross platform. And you go into this device or this application, and you can go under one of the tabs is basically skills. And from there, it's almost like an app store within the application. You can go and subscribe to certain skills, one being, like I said, flash briefing. There are multiple flash briefing apps, and by adding them to your Echo, um, will add on to your flash briefing. So you can have a bunch of these basically tailored or tallied up to go and cycle through once you've asked your Echo to give you your flash briefing. That's one of the things I used. Do you? I don't want to keep going and like bore people out of this,
Oh
but
no, you're fine. I think this is useful and interesting, and I think another part to it to highlight is that you can set up skills from not only a computer where you're
yes,
logged into the Amazon site, but you can also do it from the mobile, I'm not going to say her name, Echo app.
yes, the Echo
It's
app.
actually called her name app, but
Yes,
it's isn't it? Anyway,
yes,
it's
yes, it
it's
is.
the Echo app, but you can put it on an Android device or an iPhone,
Yeah,
and from there you can actually get access to all the skills and set them up as well. So that way you don't have to log into a PC or a Mac and try to do it that way, um, or you can do it from an iPad too.
yeah.
So just a tip there that it's easy to get to these skills and set them up, and it doesn't take too much to figure them out.
Exactly. One of the best things about the Echo and the Echo Dot or any of the Echo devices, it is extremely easy to set up. And when I mean it's easy for me to set up, yes, but you can give it to less tech savvy individuals, and you either get, you can read the instructions on a piece of, like it's a little manual that they give you, or you could do it through the app, and it walks you through everything,
Yeah,
um,
that's such a great point. It's
which
really, really easy.
which is great because some people are thinking, Justin, this is too complicated. You've already made something way too complicated for me. Listen, I that's just one of the things that I use. Another thing that I've already set up, which can also be done through the Alexa app. Dang it, the Echo app. Um, as everybody's Echoes are
The struggle
opening
is
up.
real.
Yes. It's basically hooked up my Hue lights, which are the fill up Hue lights or smart lights. I have the ability to turn on, turn off through an app or by voice command. So I've kind of tied that into it using the already built-in skill that on the app by setting, or actually it's not a skill. I think it's called. Forgive me for taking a quick pause, but it is under smart home, I think. Yep.
Yeah, it's a smart home skill, and the only reason I know that is because I added my Ecobee to my Alexa. Oh,
Mhm.
darn it.
Yeah, we're
To
just
my Echo, and it was a smart home skill as
yeah,
well. And that allows me to walk around my house yelling temperatures at my can to change the temperatures
yeah,
in my house. So it sounds dumb, but maybe you don't have your phone on you and you're walking around, you go, wow, it's actually a little warm in here. Let me crank the AC a little bit. And then you can yell some things and it turns the AC up, so or down, or turns the heat on, or turns off the fan.
yeah.
It's all quite nice because you can just yell at it and it makes those changes.
Exactly, and you can set up essentially the devices through that app. You can set up groups so that, for example, I can say, "Hey, lady, turn on the den lights," and it'll turn on my lights that I have programmed, or my Hue lights in the den, or the family room, or the bedroom. I think it's really fascinating, and it was really easy to set up. It was more complicated than the skill for flash briefing, but if you have a friend who's tech savvy, I'm sure they can help you. There's plenty of YouTube videos online that can help you with that too as well. And it's really, really um, not hard to get into the train of, or get on the train of starting to add every possible smart device after you buy it to this app. So, um,
Yeah, the groups let you set up, like you said, rooms
yeah,
of various smart devices together. So
yes,
that lets you then address multiple smart devices from one group, which is pretty cool because you
yeah,
could say, lady in a tube, uh, turn on the living room, and maybe you're talking about not only just lights, but it could be, I don't
TV,
even know what else, the TV, the speaker system, I don't know. So it could be a
a
lot of different
fan.
things.
Yeah, it can be
Yeah.
literally everything. And the last piece of it is probably the most widely used and doesn't require much setup. If you have an Amazon Prime account and you have Amazon Music Unlimited, I think it is, or just Amazon Music, you can just speak into the lady in the tube and ask for it to play a song for you or a playlist. Or eventually, if you get savvy, you can hook up a podcast skill and ask it to play your most recent podcast. So that's one of the things that I know my mom and my family use because we we bought my mom one for her birthday. We bought an Echo, and then for my mother, or sorry, my father-in-law, we did the same thing. And every time I'm there, they're using the Echo constantly, whether it's setting timers when you're cooking, which is also very helpful. And I think
Yeah, I use that all the time.
3 timers or four, you could have a ridiculous amount of timers. I was
You can
watering.
actually name them too. You could say,
Yeah.
set a timer for chicken
Yep.
and set a timer for noodles.
Yeah, and what I did today, and when I was watering my grass, I set like 3 timers to tell me at which point I have to move one of the sprinklers over and one of the other sprinklers over. So it's super nice, and I can talk about later on a complicated thing that we set up, but I wanted just to give off really the day-to-day things that I use that aren't too complicated and that anybody can really jump in and start utilizing. So
Yeah, our Echo was a Christmas present from me to my wife because I know my wife likes music as much as she does,
yeah,
and that is absolutely her favorite part of it. You do not have to have an Amazon Prime Unlimited
correct.
subscription. You
Good
can
call.
just have Amazon Prime and you can yell at it to play songs and it will play songs. And the beauty of it and why it is such a great device over some other competitors out there, I'll say,
Hmm.
is that you can ask it to play the song that has and then say lyrics. Like, say,
Yes.
play the song that says, I got you, baby, and then it will play a song. Or play X, Y, and Z artist, and it will play all the top songs from that artist. Or shuffle songs by X, Y, Z. So you don't even need playlists. You don't even really need to set anything up. You can
Right.
just yell things at it, and it just does stuff.
It's gotten so
Um,
good at they've gotten so good at making it learn too and just knowing key phrases. Even if you like stumble a word somehow, it manages to like, but the algorithm says, okay, I think it's similar to this, so I will play this artist, I think is what he said or he or she said. So,
Yeah, that's a great point. It's so on point every time you ask it to do something that sometimes, if it's wrong or gets it wrong, you look at the other person in the room and you're like, maybe I said it wrong. Because it's just so plug and play, so easy to use, and it usually gets it right. So, yeah, it's been a great addition in our house, and it gets used daily, at least a few times a day. So, for music.
yeah, and you can, and just one more thing about the music side of the Echo and the Echo Dot, you don't, like you said, you don't need Amazon Music. There are other applications or other services like Spotify to call
Oh yeah,
out.
that's a good point.
You can, if you have a Spotify account, you can set up. The only downside here with the Echo and the Echo Dot and all the Amazon Echo devices, there isn't really an integration with any like Apple products. So like if you have Apple Music, you can't call the tube to play something from Apple Music. However, it the Echo speaker itself is actually a Bluetooth device in itself. So I could on my phone connect to the device and play from my phone or any like my laptop at play open up the Apple Music app and play a song from there, and it'll act like an external speaker essentially, or Bluetooth speaker. So there are ways around it. You lose the smart capabilities behind it, um, but it's still pretty nifty and sounds dang good. They're getting even better with the Echo itself for a speaker. That thing sounds pretty good for something that's
Yeah,
like
no, it sounds great, I think.
$69 at the lowest end and
Yeah.
$90 depending on what sale is going on. So
Yeah, and the Bluetooth aspect of it is actually pretty easy to use,
yep,
and you still can tell the Echo to skip a song or to pause your music
right.
or to shuffle. It actually will pick that up and do it over Bluetooth, which is pretty great. So
Yep.
even though it won't let you yell things at it for lyrics or particular songs, you can hit play on your phone and then it will play that music. You can tell her to pause it without having to actually touch your phone again. So
Exactly.
that's a great aspect of it. That's a good point. So really, you can use anything with it that's Bluetooth.
I guess I lied. I have one more thing, and then I want to ask you the same question. If you have anything else that I didn't mention. One other thing is we just recently started doing this, but the ability to create lists with the Echo, and I'm sorry if I took yours, but
No, no.
one of the big things that my wife and I like to do is make sure that we share the grocery list. And usually she writes it down on a piece of paper, and we just go back and forth on like what we need to get. Well, you can actually use the Echo to create a list for you, and every time you're going through the refrigerator, like, oh crap, we need to get this, you can say, hey Echo, or hey lady, um, add eggs to the grocery list, and she'll add eggs to the grocery list. And what's nice is that if I'm going to grocery shopping, what it does is save the list actually on the app, the Echo app or the Lady app, and you can go into that list and see everything that you've added. And after you've gone shopping, you can clear that out. I think you just say clear or list. I can't remember the correct phase. You can either manually do it or you can do it through um, voice to command. So it's fast. It's really nice and easy, and you can do a whole bunch of other things. So those are just the things that we use on a day-to-day basis with the
Yeah,
Echo.
we don't use that aspect of it because we actually share our shopping lists when we need to through Apple Notes. We just have a running note that we both can type into and check off if we
Yeah.
need to. But I actually have heard of several people who use that feature because, I mean, it's great. You can just yell at it.
Yep.
Hey, lady, put this on the list, and she puts it on the list, and you can have. I'm sorry, I wasn't listening to you as usual. But you can have multiple lists named, right?
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
you can add them anytime. Say create a named list for X, Y, and Z,
Create a bucket
and then
list.
add blah blah blah, and then also add something useful more than blah blah blah. So,
Yeah.
um, it's actually a great feature, and since she's so really accurate with all that, it
hmm
actually is quite useful.
So I think I've already talked about what I do, and you can do that too as well. But I know you have some other cool features that Alexa, dang it, Echo can do that you can do with your Echo. We should have a coin jar for every time we say her name or the voice commands for the other lady in a phone. We have to put like 25 cents into the jar.
Yeah, that would be great.
But I'd be poor. But why don't you give the listeners one, I guess that list if you have it of some of the cool features that you can do on the Echo.
Well, this is going to make great radio because I actually think you just covered everything that we do at my
Dang
house
it!
pretty much. The only additional thing is that the kids absolutely love it and absolutely have a blast asking her to tell jokes,
Oh
asking
yeah.
her to tell stories. They ask her to sing jingle bells all the time because you can do that. And the jokes, you can say, tell me a kid's joke or tell me a joke. It's actually different depending. So, yeah, you can tell her to tell jokes. And actually, I'm looking through, I actually have a few different emails from the Amazon company about the Alexa and the Echo. So here's just some examples. Um, hey, lady, tell me what I want to hear. Who is Tiger Woods grouped with at the Open Championship? Open sleep sounds. Play new music from Amazon Music. Tell me a golf joke. You can actually ask her to tell you a golf joke. Oh my
Really?
gosh, check this out. The first one on the list for this week is hey, lady, is a hot dog a sandwich?
Are you serious?
Yes.
Oh my gosh!
I'm totally doing that tomorrow when the kids are awake.
Amazon listened to our podcast. Jeff
She
Bezos
totally
listened
did.
to it.
Oh, Jeff, why? Why, Jeff? How do I play Family Dance Party from Amazon Music downstairs? So, like, that brings up a new point. You have a Echo Dot and a regular Echo. You can ask her to play it in different rooms, right? You can tell her downstairs or living room or bedroom. Do you have
Nice.
that set up for the Echo Dot or no?
Yeah, I do that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that's kind of nice. So those are just a couple of examples. I'm looking through, I'm not seeing anything super standout that we need to mention again. Oh, Amazon, Lady, let's chat, sing a campfire song, tell me a
Nice.
giraffe fact. The kids love asking her for facts and asking her about different animals and things like that. So for the kids, they have a blast. And of course, they love having dance parties and asking different songs at different times. And we've even had a few. Echo Wars, where we actually call it the lady's name, but I'm not going to say it, where everybody's going back and forth yelling songs out. So it's a good time. It's a great device.
That's kind of cool to see people use it in a way that it probably wasn't necessarily intended for, but it turns out doing exactly. It's like bringing the family together to do some weird family activity that I don't know how to explain it, but that just makes me smile
Yeah,
when you're
no,
talking about it.
it's definitely is a fun family activity, which is pretty funny because I mean it's just a lady in a tube, so it's funny that it works that way.
Yeah, cool. Uh, I lost my show notes. There we go. So, so we talked about the Hue lights, and we talked about kind of your Ecobee, the Nest. Let's see, what else can we talk about? We can talk about some things from a more complex side of using the devices. We talked about the Echo side, so I guess let me backtrack. We didn't really talk about like the Google Home or the HomePod. I don't know the capabilities of the HomePod because, to my understanding, it really is just limited to, um, at this point, a really makeshift lady in an Apple device commands, which are already they're not as helpful,
Extensive.
extensive.
Yeah.
There isn't really any integration, and there probably is somewhere, but it's
Well,
less
and the
so.
problem with this particular episode and every episode hereafter is going to be that it's a self-selecting bias we have since I have an Echo, you have an Echo, but we
Yeah,
don't have,
a
the
Google
Google
Home.
Assistant. We don't
Yeah,
have the Apple HomePod. The only one I wanted to mention before we get complex is Siri. That's the one. And look, she even
she
activated right there.
nice. Oh, please tell me
Uh,
you recorded that.
I guess I did.
Yes.
So I use that on my phone constantly,
Hmm.
and that is my. While the kids use the Echo at home all the time, I'm constantly using the lady on my phone all the time, who shall not be named, lest she activate. But I cheat at life with Siri basically, and the way I do that is I hold the home button down, which actually you won't be able to do on your phone
No,
since
I
you
can
have a
just
cool 10.
maybe if I stare at it, it'll do it. No.
Actually, I don't know that. How do you physically activate Siri on that phone?
I have to speak her name,
Oh, okay. So you have to say, "Hey, lady."
or I hold down the power button.
The power button. That's really interesting.
Yeah,
All right.
and then it.
I figured as much.
There, see.
So the cool part about that way to do it, where you're activating her by holding the button down, is that you can start talking. A lot of people don't know this. You could start talking before you see her come up on the phone, as
Hmm.
long as you're holding the button down.
Correct.
So press and hold the button and just start talking, and she'll pick it up. And so I will press the button and I'll say things like, "Remind me when I get home about boiling eggs." I'm making that up, but just for the purposes of this podcast.
Yes.
And she'll say, "Okay, I'll remind you about boiling eggs when you get home." And the cool part is that automatically, without me doing anything fancy, creates a geofence around my house. So now I drive to within, I think it's, well, I don't want to quote a number. It's like 100, 200-foot radius of my house.
Yeah.
And I get the pop-up on my phone, boil eggs, right when I'm walking in the door. So that is incredibly useful to me because I am the absent-minded professor. I constantly forget things. And so I use that lady and that device to to cheat at life constantly. And the other way I'll do it is I'll ask her to remind me at a certain time, like, "Hey, remind me about picking up X, Y, and Z at 5 p.m." And
Hmm.
she'll do that. So that's the way I use her constantly.
Yeah, and what's nice is that, like you said, it's not as complex where you have to go in and change a setting of what is home, what is work, because I think the she already or she or your phone already knows based off of the time you spent in that location that that is home, that is work, based off of some sort of algorithm or some sort of logic. So that's really nice. It's really easy for you to really do that, and that's one thing I will say. she does pretty well as being able to remind me of when I need to do something. Because unfortunately, I'm not always near my Echo, and I can't, you know, I can't tell the Echo from afar, hey, remind me when I get home to do this. I can do that now with my phone, and does the job when I get home. So definitely very helpful. And there's hopefully with this next iOS 12 update, which we can talk about shortly, there will be more integration with Siri. Dang it! Uh,
It's okay. You didn't say hey before it.
yeah, with her through commands and adding these things called workflows and automating a lot of tasks that can do pretty cool stuff. So,
Yeah, the other thing I'll do is I'll say, hey, blah de blah, take a note. And
yep,
then that prompts her to ask for what do you want to take a note on? And
yep,
then you can just start saying stuff.
yep,
So I'll create notes all the time using that feature. The other thing I'll do is I'll create calendar events
yep,
on my phone. I'll say, create a new event, and she'll ask when and where, and then she'll ask what the event is.
yep,
Or you can, the cool thing is if you get more comfortable with it, you can press and hold the button or say, hey, lady, and then just say create event at 3 p.m. tomorrow for going to grandma's, and
yep,
then she just reads it back and then you're done. So
yep.
that's when you start getting more comfortable with it, that's when it's really feels fast and useful and just really snappy.
Yeah, it makes it seem like that smart house uh, movie on Disney where it's really a conversation or a single command that can put together a fairly complex process for the phone and output it pretty quickly, and then boom, now you have an invite that you didn't even have to lift your phone up. Maybe you did, but you didn't really have to use your hands at all. You could have been working on something else, like cooking dinner or playing with your kid, entertaining your kid. So it really helps with accessibility, which is part of the process of using, or part of the reasons why people use voice assistants. So,
Yeah. The last thing I do constantly with Lady in the iPhone is is I will tell her to send a text message. So you can say, "Hey, lady, send a message to Justin Fry," and then she'll prompt you to tell her what the message is, and then you say the message, and then she will ask, "Is this what you said?" and read it off to you.
yes,
You say yes or no, and then if you say yes, she'll say, "Do you want to send it?" Then you say yes, and
yeah,
then it's gone. The faster way to do it that I always do is, "Hey, lady, tell Justin Fry I'm bringing X, Y, and Z over." And then that creates the message and also creates the actual text in the message. And then she says, "Is this what you want to say to Justin Fry?" I say yes, and then she sends it. So that also can be very fast. I constantly use that in the phone, I'm sorry, in the car. And it's very useful for that. She can read messages off to you. I'll say, "Hey, lady, read off my messages." And she'll either say, "You don't have any new messages," or uh, "Justin sent you 3 new messages," and then reads them off, and then asks if you want to reply. So getting comfortable with that is can be useful because it's always with you. It's kind of that old adage: the best camera is the one you have with you, while the best voice assistant is the one that you have with you.
right.
And that's why I use it as much as I do. It's in my pocket, it's constantly there, and it works 90% of the time. So why not?
Right. And um, its integration with its own home device, Apple's HomePod, fairly well does it very well as from what I understand. Again, like you said, we both don't own anything other than Echo devices. Unfortunately, I can't speak on behalf of how the Google Home works. I understand Google Home has very similar integration as the Echo does, where you can hook it up with similar devices like the Hue Lights or some of these wireless adapters that plug into outlets to turn a dumb device into a smart device. So I don't know if the HomePod can do that. So maybe that's some follow up I'll have put for myself for next episode to put in there just to kind of talk about that because it seems like the HomePod itself is more or less a bigger or a more hmm, it's a speaker. It's a luxurious speaker. Let's call it that.
Yeah, it's more about music and sound rather
Yes.
than assistance. I imagine that will change in the near future as Apple wants to stay, I'm sure, ahead of the game. But for now, that's all it's really the focus of it is. I do want to add, though, that on the Apple side, they have what's called HomeKit, which
Yes.
is their actually really well put together set of home automation, home smart device, uh, like dashboard,
Hmm.
and also has a lot of APIs. That's we talked about what those were before. Those are just hooks into different software that people can use. It's really fully featured and not really something that if you have like Hue Lights or other smart devices that you're going to use directly HomeKit, but in other words, those apps that are built by the people at like Ecobee or Nest,
Hmm.
that's what they use to build it on the iOS side.
Hmm.
So um, what that means to you is that when you download those apps, they are actually fully featured and very nice to use. And your phone and your iPad can actually do a lot of the same features that the Echo can, if not more. So if you need more information on that, you can go to Apple's website
Yeah.
or you can look up HomeKit. I think it's actually, yeah, you can look up HomeKit and it will tell you more about it. So,
Yeah, and just some real time follow up. I actually looked on my HomeKit on my iPhone, and on the automation tab talks about how you can make your Apple TV and HomePod the center of your home, essentially turning it into a hub. And you can grant access to people you trust, yada yada. But you can make commands through there, through the lady in another tube. And I find that fascinating that if you have like a separate device at home, like an iPad that might be attached to this HomePod, you can actually make that the hub, and anything that is set up on your HomeKit will use your iPad or the extra device as the hub, rather than I think third-party hubs that you might have to buy. Samsung has one, or there's like a Smart Things hub that you can get to integrate all smart products into one location. So just kind of cool. So that's
yeah,
some real
it's
follow up.
a pretty underrated feature of Apple's.
Yeah.
And whatever you want to say about it, whether it's great or not, they have actually done a lot to push that whole product set of products, the smart home products, in a specific direction and kind of standardize a little bit, which
Yeah.
is what we really need because they're all over the place right now. So I really applaud them for that, and actually, it's a pretty fully featured set of tools for developers, so that's kind of nice.
Yeah.
So. Well, I feel like we still haven't scratched even the surface, but I feel like we're out of time on talking too much more about it. I don't really want to touch on the complex side of things. I feel like we could go like another hour with that stuff.
Yeah. Uh, I wonder if this means that we have part trace of this or
Yeah,
something.
maybe we'll do that next week. Maybe we'll do that in the future just to kind of give it a break. I don't know.
Yeah, I
I don't
agree.
know. We could do it next week. Who knows?
We'll see. We'll see what comes out. And I agree. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but there's so much more to it, and the complex part is when it gets real fun, especially for you and I. I know you introduced a lot to me on things like workflow and other
It gets dangerous
applications.
though, man. It gets so dangerous.
Yeah, because just like like let me give a quick snapshot of what could be what could happen is that you really could set it up so that um, you can use some of these devices or applications to automate your entire life as you're leaving your house. Whether so, if I'm leaving my house, something I could have something assist me in turning my air conditioning down as I leave the geofence, and then I'm at work and I'm leaving from work. I tell one of my devices I'm actually leaving, and it'll send a message to my house. And I'm using my house in quotes because acting as a smart house, and it will basically turn down the lights or turn on the lights depending on how you have it set up. Turn on the air conditioning or heat. Maybe you have a dog feeder, a dog feeder like a food dispenser for your dog or cat, which there are automated or there are Alexa. Dang it, smart house, basically smart devices that are integrated into these products and will dispense food for them and say, "Hey, I'm on my way home." It's crazy. So I don't want to get into it, but there are so many things you can do.
Yeah, if you've ever gotten to work and wondered if you closed the garage door,
Yes.
I mean that's the kind of stuff that's for you.
I've
I
totally
mean,
forgot about that.
yeah.
I have a smart garage door. I didn't even remember. I'm so sorry.
That's the useful stuff. Like, I mean, that's the stuff that keeps me awake at night. And
Oh my
you get to
god.
work and you're like, "Oh crap, did I close the garage?"
Yeah, and you
Oh,
can
and
close
now,
it away.
yeah, now you can look and say, "Oh, look, it is actually closed." Or better yet, you have peace of mind because you set the automation where after 15 minutes it closes it if it's open anyway.
Yeah,
So,
it's
um,
fantastic.
that's the cool stuff.
Cool. Well, I think that's it for the topic for at least for today's purpose. Let's jump right into our favorite part, or at least I think more or less your favorite part. I'm kidding. It's both of our favorite parts. We try to get something off our chest. It's that rant section. So I think I went first last time. And if I didn't, that's okay. You can go because I'm feeling generous today. Or do you need me to go
Oh,
first?
no. Yeah, why don't you go
Okay,
first?
let me go
Just
first.
okay, fine.
Um, because this is actually funny because the rant is people make
I
their own choices.
I just am looking at yours and I want to know I want to know what you mean and why.
Okay, so one of the things that I experienced this week, and I constantly experience, and I'm sure we all do, um, when you go into a meeting or you're talking to somebody about a decision they're making, and you propose a suggestion, or you just say, "Oh, what about? Did you think about this, or is this a better way of doing it?" And then they go, "Oh yeah, I think we should do that instead." But and essentially throw away their possibly what they had been thinking about for hours before this meeting or hours before talking to you, and now because they can't like stand by and be confident and stand by their own choice, that they are now backtracking and going with what somebody else is saying. So be confident, make your own. People need to make your own choices. It's okay if the choice isn't right, or it maybe I should say that if the choice leads to a mistake, but that's your choice. You gotta stand by it. People need to make their own choices. Stop letting people dictate everything that you're doing. You're a person. You have your own mind. You can think for yourself. People need to make their own choices. So
This
that's.
is really tough for some people.
I know. I mean, it's people aren't always confident, and I understand that. Some people uh, unfortunately have experiences that make them less confident and they can't
Yeah,
make
it
their own
takes a lot of
choices.
work sometimes.
But I know people out there, and the particular group of people who I'm talking about indiscreetly have confidence. It's just for some reason they just can't make their own choice. So I hope one day they do.
Yeah, remember you're just a person in a room full of other people and they're just people.
Yes.
And there aren't any bears in the room with you or
Yeah.
outside the door. So just make it happen.
Make it happen.
Well, in comparison to my rant, that actually is very philosophical. But my rant is something far lesser. It's 2018. Is there any way that we could perfect the PC docking and undocking
Ugh.
uh, set of
Preach.
technology? I don't understand. I mean, I came from obviously an Apple-based computer company, I should say.
Yeah.
Maybe not company, but where I have never cared about whether my computer was open when I quote docked or whether it was closed or if the screen was on or what was connected. Like the Apple stuff, you just connect it and it just works. And yet we can't seem to figure that out with PCs. I mean, come on. I undock and sometimes it just flips out and disconnects me from the Wi-Fi. I undock and sometimes the screen won't come back up. I dock and sometimes my keyboard, external keyboard won't work until I log in, or I dock and sometimes the screen doesn't come up on my other monitors. It's like it's like voodoo magic somehow, and I don't think it's really that hard. I really don't. So if Apple can do it, everybody can do it.
And to be fair, there are non-Apple docking devices, which I don't think there's any Apple docking devices
Well,
because
no, and they're pressing into the same direction that most of the PC manufacturers are, which is USB-C. You connect the one cable and everything's connected,
yeah,
which I think is a cool direction. I don't think we're there yet, and it's a little early, Apple, so cut it out. But still, I I'm cool with that. It's just Windows.
yeah.
Really, figure it out, Windows. You can do it. I promise.
I just it's like coming in and wondering, okay, how long is it going to take me to log in today? 15 minutes or an hour? Or I'm going from one meeting to my desk. I'm really hoping that I'm going to have no problems logging in, and I hope my Wi-Fi adapter doesn't disable itself because I'm running it something and I need it to hold the connection. If I lose connection, it stops halfway. So
Well, that's the problem. It's a deeper, I mean, it sounds dumb on paper, but then it's deeper. You now do not think of your device as reliable. Like, you can't rely on the fact that you're going to be able to just sit down and do work. You now have to be Joe troubleshoot guy and pretend like you're going to figure it out. And that's cutting time off the time that you should be working, which sucks because it's such a pain in the butt. And I imagine that the times that I've had problems with it, part of it is maybe the ultra lockdown image that might be on the computer. But
yes.
that's not all the time. It's definitely Windows as well. Just I can't describe it here because it will take another hour, but there are absolutely times that is 100% Windows. And for goodness sake, it's not hard. Even though it's really hard, it's not hard.
And I think
And rant.
on that note, we can go ahead and end the podcast. I just wanted, we all wanted to, or we meaning Josh and I, wanted to thank everybody for listening to our 12th episode. Uh, you can follow the show on Twitter at Digital Divide PC, or you can send us feedback by sending us an email to askdigitaldivide@gmail.com. Additionally, you can check out our website at www.digitaldividepodcast.com. All links, obviously, will be in the show notes, as always. And finally, you can follow us on our personal accounts. Myself, you can follow me on Twitter at JustinFry121. Josh, where can they find you?
On Twitter, I'm at jcharletto. That's JCIARLETTO. And you can also email me at josh@charletto.com. Feel free to reach out on either of those.
And lastly, if you liked this episode or any of our previous episodes, please give us a review on iTunes or anywhere you are currently listening to the podcast. And until next time, take care.
Bye.